It's been a journey over the past 15 years or so. When I first started writing songs, I wanted to be like Alanis Morissette and kind of angsty and sing really loudly. And it took a few years to figure out that that's not really my thing. And we worked with a producer who is really good at kind of identifying what is special about what I do. And he said very gently, "Have you noticed that your voice sounds really great when you sing quietly?" And so that was a big turning point, just to have somebody from the outside identify, hey, this is what kind of sets you apart. And so as Dave and I continued writing songs, we kind of kept that in mind. And when we first started out, we thought we're going to be super hip and play to college students, and that's not really what happened. We just noticed that we were connecting with the people our age and in our stage of life, and it's just been in the past couple years that I've really noticed that most of my songs connect the most with women, and specifically women who are young moms. I think because that's the boat that I'm in currently, and so I think that that's who connects with my music.
I think though too, like, sort of going back to what you were saying, when we first started out, we thought we would play to like the really cool hip kids, and we ended up realizing that our music isn't cool or hip.
No.
And so really, like, it was about kind of embracing the audience that we found ourselves playing to. And it turned out that the audience that was listening to JJ's music was mostly outcasts, people who felt like they didn't have a place where they belonged, people who
Felt isolated.
Yeah, like they were going through some stage of grief, and JJ's music resonated with them. And so I feel like rather than dictating who your audience is, it's so much more about paying attention to who is resonating with what it is that you do. And we've recently discovered that, like, it's women that are resonating with JJ's music. I mean, I guess we've always known that, but we ended up figuring it out. So, so now when we're songwriting, when we're creating, we're keeping that audience in mind. So that way we're not making something that's inaccessible to the people who are listening to JJ's music.
I think a lot of that has to do with creating from a place of honesty, and it's when we stopped trying to be really cool that we could really be true to the art that we are called specifically to make. And for example, just a few years ago, we wrote a whole album full of lullabies and love songs, and
it was so hip.
It was so hip. And for me, it was a little bit of a break from the typical songwriting that I was doing. And over the years, I had gotten lots of comments from people about how God had used my songs to make some radical transformation in their life. And so what started happening was I started to put all of this pressure on myself to write a life-changing song full of theological insights. And it just became too much. It's too much pressure. And so I thought, okay, maybe I just need to take a break from this, do something that's perhaps a little less meaningful, but true to the stage of life that we were in at the time. We had 2 really small kids at home, and something that was really important to us was helping them fall asleep. And so we thought, we'll make an album full of love songs and lullabies, and it will be our gift to the parents out there in the world, and hopefully it would help them calm their children for sleep. And I knew that, you know, it wasn't going to have some super deep spiritual impact on people's lives, but at the same time, it still felt authentic, and it felt like the direction that God was leading us. And so what was really surprising was that after we released it into the world, we did start hearing stories from parents saying that it was really soothing for their children, and that was amazing to hear. But beyond that, we started hearing stories of adoptive families using it as their theme song to bond their families together, and they would sing it at night. And then we heard countless stories of parents using it in the medical context for their kids, playing it for their children as they were getting ready to go in for surgery or recovering from medical procedures, or kids with special needs listening to it, and it would be the only thing that could calm them down when they were having a fit. And so it was just incredible and humbling at the same time to hear stories like that, how God had used something like a simple lullaby to do big things in people's lives. And it was humbling in the sense that it wasn't really me putting out...
You weren't forcing your way into... We didn't decide, okay, we're going to make a meaningful record that's going to fit in the medical community. Mm-hmm. We kind of released it and let it take on a life of its own. And then after we started getting that feedback, we started donating records to medical workers who could distribute it to these families where it could be used for that purpose. And so that wasn't something that we premeditated, it was just something that ended up happening. And I feel like that's, in general, the story of JJ's career, is that like we write something that feels true to us, mm-hmm. and then it takes on a life of its own, often 3 or 4 years after we've created it. And like we just kind of have to hold it with an open hand and allow it to find its place.
The Lord has a pretty amazing way of placing us in the space where we will have the most impact for His kingdom. And so for a lot of us, that means being home with our kids. And it might not get a lot of glory, but it doesn't make it any less meaningful. And the Lord delights in seeing us step into those roles that He's placed for us to step into. And I love thinking about it like just that moms are bringing up the next generation of the leaders of the world. So I think that's a pretty big job, and I think that it's worth recognizing.